Hi everyone, in this video we are going to build this single page personal portfolio website, and this is a very nice project to get you going with the basics of HTML, CSS and a little JavaScript. So this is how the page works. Starting from the header section, we have the navbar section over here, we have the person's name, we have some list items, and when you hover over them you will see this text underlined that slides from the left to the right, and it works for all of them. We also have a place where you can send an email to the person, which actually doesn't send any email, but you don't have to tell anyone. So when you focus on the input field, you see it extends, allowing you to type whatever you want to type over there. So this is my message, and I can send this, and it refreshes the page. At this side, we also have some text here describing the person. We have the person's name in some gradient colors. So we are going to be learning a whole lot of things in this short video. We also have the social media icons of the person with some hover effect, who wants on it. We also have this button here, these two buttons here with some hover effect. We have the skills section, we have the person's image, and we also have some projects. And when you hover over them, you see the description of the project slides in. And this page is also mobile responsive. So we can open this page on a smaller screen size. And this is how it looks. So we have it here like this. You can see over here, we still have our name here. We have the input field here. When you click on it, it extends, allowing you to type something. But we don't have the list items, the list items we had on the larger screen. Here you have to toggle to open and close the drop-down menu. So we have it here. You can close it. And this is what we are going to be using the JavaScript for, a very short one. We also have everything. Apart from that, everything else is just like it was, just that the orientation is different this time around. So it's mobile responsive. Our project works perfectly. And we have this text here. It only appears on the smaller screen. Thanks for visiting my website. So folks, this is what we want to build in this video, and we are building this using HTML, CSS, and a very simple JavaScript. And folks, before we start this video, please take a moment to smash the like button for this video and subscribe to my channel for more tutorials like this. Even though it is free, it means much to me. That being said, grab your tools because we're starting right now. On my desktop, I create this folder and give it a name, portfolio. You can call it anything you want. And inside of it, I have another folder called images, in which I have some images that I'll be using, some icons, and some images that I'll be using for this tutorial. So what I'll do is that I'll just drag and drop this in my code editor, and I'm using Visual Studio Code. So now our folder is open in Visual Studio Code, and you can see we have the images folder here. So the first thing I want to do from here is to create a file for the HTML. I call it index.html. After this, I'll create another file for the CSS. I call it style.css. So over here, I'll head over to the index.html file and create the boilerplate code. So you type exclamation and hit tab. So we want to change this to portfolio, the title. And after this, we'll link the HTML to the CSS. So you type link and set the href to style.css. And we'll jump into the body and create a div and give it a class wrapper. Inside of it, I'll create one div and give it a class light. You can copy this and paste again. Now let's give the CSS styling for this. In the CSS, we'll select the entire document and give some default styling. Remove all margins, padding 0, box sizing to border box. Now let's start the wrapper div. Set the width 100%, min height 100 VH, background color should be black, position relative, overflow to hidden. So now we'll head back to the HTML and run this code with the VS Code Live Server extension. Now we have this blank web page with the background color on it. So let's continue. Now let's start the light divs. These are the lights we have here. Those divs that we have at the background, these colors over here, the 3 of them, they are actually 3, but I added only 2. So let's give the styling. It's in the wrapper div. Width is 250 pixels. Height is the same. Border radius is 50%, so that will make it a circle. Let's just give it a white background color so that we can see it. So this is what we have here. So in the HTML, let's add the third one. So now we have 3 of them. We'll set position absolute, and we'll add some filter. It's blur, we'll give it 10 pixels. So when we save this, now you can see it's stacked on top of each other. So let's position them to their various locations, like we have here, here, and here. And for that, we have to select them separately. So we'll select the first one using the pseudo class, colon first child. So since we give all the light an absolute position, we can actually move them on the page using top, left, and right. So first at top, 3 REM. 3 REM. We'll set the background color to this RGBA color code. After this, we'll select the second one. So light, colon nth child. This is the second, so it's 2. We'll set top 5 REM, right -6. The first one, let's make it negative. Now let's give it a background color of this RGBA color code. Now let's start the last one, and it's light. So we can give the styling. We can actually select this one with the last child pseudo class, but I choose to make it this way. We set bottom -6 REM. For the left, we use calc 50% minus 250 pixels. That will set it at a desirable position for me. So we'll give it a background color of this RGBA color code. So when we save this, now you see we have our light divs at the background, the 3 of them. So let's continue. After the third light div, we want to create a div and give it a class container. Let's give the CSS for it. So we'll select the container div, set width 100%. Background color, this RGBA color code. So we can go back to the HTML. Inside the container div, we'll create a div and give it a class navbar. This navbar div will create an h1, and the text will be the initials of my name. So be sure to use your name as well. So after this, we'll create a UL. Inside of it, we'll create an li, and in the li, we'll create an anchor tag and set the href to a hashtag because it's not going anywhere. And the text is home. So I'll copy this and paste for the remaining list items about, skills, and projects. The navbar will give it a class navlist. Inside the UL, before the list items, we will link an img, which is the close icon. Set the alt text to closed icon, and we'll give it a class close icon. After the UL, we'll create a form which is for the message. This one over here, where the user can send an email. So we'll create a form with a class message. Set the action to a hashtag because it's not going anywhere. Inside the form, we'll create an input field. The type is text. We'll call it message. We'll set the ID to message. And after the input field, we'll create a button. And the text is sent. We'll give it a type submit. And the input field, we'll give it a placeholder. I forgot to mention. Enter email. After the form, I want to insert the hamburger menu. I have an icon for it. So ing hamburger. Set the alt to hamburger. I'll give it a class hamburger menu. Hamburger icon. The hamburger icon and the close icon will be useful on smaller devices. So when we run this, you see we have these nasty looking items on the page. So let's give the CSS for it. Let's start with the navbar. It's inside the container div. So we'll set the width 100%. We set the padding 0, top and bottom, left and right 5 REM. Change the display to flex, align item center, justify content, space between. We give it a relative position. So let's start the H1, which is the name. It's inside the navbar. We change the font size and give it some color. I want to set some default font family for the entire document. And sans serif if it's not supported. Now let's continue with the UL. It's also inside the navbar. We set the flex basis to 40%. which is the same as technically the width, since the parent element has a display flex. Now let's start the close icon inside the UL. So we'll give this CSS stylings to it. This is the CSS for it. Let's add some background color so that we can see it in the dark. So this is it at the corner here. But we only need this on a smaller screen. So let's set the display to none. So we don't have it again. So let's start the LI. Now let's start the A tag inside the LI. We'll set text decoration none. So when we save this, you see the text color has changed, but it seems there is a problem. Yeah, over here, everything is supposed to be in the container div, but all this while, everything is outside of it. So from the navbar, the opening and the closing navbar, we have to cut it and put it inside the container div. Now we have everything in place. Yes, so that was the problem. We are done with this one and also the UL. So we are now left with the message side and also this icon. Let's remove it there. After this, we'll start the form with the class message. It's inside the navbar. Give it a padding. After this, we'll start the input inside of it. So we'll give the CSS for it. So this is the CSS for it. And now you can see it looks good. So let's start the placeholder inside of it. We'll just change the color for it. So we'll select it again. Message input. Colon placeholder. Now it also looks white. But we want it to expand whenever a user wants to type anything into it. So we'll select it again. Focus. That means a user has clicked inside the input field. So we'll extend the width to 200 pixels. Then we'll remove the border radius so that it can be straight, be 0. Now when we click inside, we will see that it extends. But we want it to take some transition. So inside the input, we'll set some transition, 0.3 seconds, and it eases in and out. So now when we click, it takes some time. When we click out, the same. So now let's start the button. So we'll select the button. We'll give the CSS property. Now you see it also looks alright. So let's start the hamburger menu over here. It's inside the navbar. Use the styling, and when we save, you see that it's also well positioned. But we don't need it on a larger screen, so let's set the display to none. So now we don't have it anymore. So now what we are left with is the hover effect for the list item, so that when we hover over them, you see the text underline stretching from the left to the right. So let's add that. So over here, we'll go back to the UL and locate the LI and set position relative, so that we can absolutely position a chart element. So now we'll have to use the before pseudo element to create the underline for it, since we can use text underline to make it animate the way we want it. So select the navbar again, double column before, use the before pseudo element. We'll set the content to an empty string. We'll set the width 100% for the meantime. Set height 2 pixels. Set background color. For this, we'll set position absolute, bottom. When we save, you see now we have this text underline, which is 100% the width of the LI. So we'll come back and let's change the width to 0 for the meantime, 0%. So now you don't see it again. So we'll animate it whenever we hover over this to fill the full width of the li. So we'll take the li again, colon hover. When we hover, we'll take the before element, colon, before. Then we'll change the width to 100%. So when we save, now when we hover over the list items, you see the text underlined. But it happens very swift, so we don't see the animation. So let's set some transition in the li. Transition 0.3 seconds is in out. Now you can see we have the hover effect working the way we want it to. So now we are technically done with the navbar side. So let's continue with the rest of the text on the page. To start with the body of the page, after the closing navbar div, I'll create a div and give it a class content. In this content div is where we are going to have this text and also this image. This text up to these buttons over here and also this image. So you can see we have two parts, one side for the text and the other side for the image. So let's add that. So in the content div, we'll create one div and give it a class left content. And after this, we'll create another one with the class right content. In the left content is where we have this text up to these buttons over here. So first we'll create an H3, an H2 instead, with the text hello, I am. Then after this, we'll create an H3. Then you put your name inside. So now we want to add this text over here, web development, and also this text over here describing whatever it is. So after this H3, we'll create a span, and the text is web development. Be sure to make this a capital letter. And after this one, we'll create a paragraph tag and generate some lorem text inside. So lorem, let's say 20 words. So now let's add the CSS for it. So we'll start with the content div. Set width 100%. Now inside of it, we have one div called left content. So let's start that one. We'll set width 50%. That's all for it. Now let's start the header text inside the left content div. We'll start with the H2. This is the CSS for the H2, so let's start the H3. So I will set the font size to 2 rem. This is the CSS for the H3 also, so let's start the span. We'll set display block. This is the CSS for the span also, so let's style the paragraph tag. We'll set width to 80%. Then we'll set line height 18 pixels. This is the styling for the paragraph tag. So when we save this, we have this and the text is quite difficult to see because we haven't applied any color to it. That's because when you look at the end of what we're building, you see that the text is not having a single color. We have some gradient color to it. One transitions from one point to the other and it works for all of them. So that's what we want to add. And it's fairly simple. So starting with the H2 header, we'll set background image, a linear gradient to right, comma. The first color is orange and the second one is alias blue. And you know, background images only apply to images, but we are now trying to apply it to the text. So we'll set background clip to text. Then we'll set color to transparent. So when we save this, you see it works for the first header over here, the H2. So let's apply it to the rest of the elements. And for the H3, we can just copy this one and paste and make some changes. And for this, we only have to interchange the colors. So this becomes alias blue and this one is orange. Then we can do same for the span. And here the first color is white and the last one is blue. Now you can see it works for these ones too. So let's add it for the text over here, the paragraph text. So for this, we can just paste it again. And for the paragraph, you'll see that the first color starts from the top and the last one ends at the down. So we don't have to do it from left to right. So we can remove this one. and change the colors from this one, Alice Blue, to this RGB color code. And when we save, you could see that it works very fine. So now let's add the social media icons and also the buttons over here. For that, we have to create a UL and give it a class left content social. In this UL, we will create an LI. In this LI, we'll create an A tag and set the href to a hashtag. In the A tag, we'll link an img and it should be the icon. So one of the icons, we'll use the LinkedIn, set the alt to icon. Now you see we have this over here. So let's add the CSS for it. So let's start with the left content socials div. We set width 100%, margin top to REM. Now let's start the LI. List style is none. Now let's start the anchor tag inside the LI. We set text decoration none. So now let's start the img, which is the icon. We set width 46 pixels. I'll give it some border. And when we run this, now it is well styled. So let's add the hover effect so that when we hover, there is this effect for it. So we select the image again, colon hover, we scale it 1.1, change the border color to white. So now this is working, but it's very fast. So let's add some transition. So in the image, we'll add the transition. Is in out. So now it takes some delay, and this is exactly what we want. So now let's add the remaining social media icons. So we just have to copy the LI and paste 3 more times for the other distance icons. So we have to change the images for all the social media icons. So these are the other images, and when we say we have them here with the hover effect and every styling we have added to this one. So now let's add the buttons, the 2 buttons. After the UL, we'll create another div with the class left content buttons. Inside of it, we'll create the 2 buttons. The first one, download CV. Then the second one is hire me. Here they are. So let's add the CSS for it. We'll start with the left content button. We give it a margin top 1.5 REM. So let's start the buttons inside of it. We'll set display inline block. I will set cursor pointer. Alice Blue. Now we can see it. So let's add the hover effect so that when we hover right, the background color will change. So we'll select it again, colon hover. When we hover, we will change the background. We'll give it a linear gradient at an angle of 160 degrees. This RGBA color code. Then we'll change the text color. And let's add some transition over here in the buttons. 0.3 seconds should ease in out. This is 0.3. So when we save, now it's working all right. So it's working the way we want it to. Now we are done with the section for the text and the button. So let's move to the side of the image. This is where we have to do with the right content. So inside of it, we'll create another div and give it a class, content image. And inside of it, we'll link an img. That is the user's image. So you have to link your image. And it's in the images, this thing. And this is what I want to use. The alt can just be image. Now let's add the CSS for it. Now let's start with the right content div, and it's inside the content div. Set flex spaces 50%. Give it some padding. This is the styling for it. Now let's start the div containing the image. We call it content image. We'll give it a fixed width. Now let's style the image itself. So a content image. Set the width. Set the background color. This RGB color code. When we save this is what we have. So now what we are left with is the skill side and also the recent project, as well as the mobile responsiveness of the page. So let's go. So after the closing content div, we'll create another div and give it a class footer content. And inside of it, we'll have two sections. The skills section and also the portfolio projects. We'll create a div for the skills and also for the portfolio. Now let's add the CSS for it. So we'll select the footer content and it's inside the container. We'll give it width 100%. We'll give it some padding. 0 for top and bottom and 5 rem for left and right. Set background color transparent. So now let's create this header as well as this box and the contents inside of it. So in the skills, we will create an h2 with the text skills. After this, we'll create a div with the class skill container. Inside of it, we'll create another with the class skills detail. This check circle, this text over here, and also the description of it. So for the circle, we'll create a span. Now we'll insert the checked HTML entity. Check. After this, an h3 header with the text HTML. And afterwards, we have a paragraph tag for the description. And this is hypertext markup language. So now let's add the CSS for it. We first select the skills div. Select the skills div and it's inside the footer content. We remove all padding. And we'll style the h2. We'll give the CSS for it. Now we'll style the skills container. We'll set display grid template column 1FR 1FR. We'll give it some gap. Now we are getting somewhere. Now let's style the skills detail. It's inside the skills container. Now let's style the span inside of it. We'll set display inline block. This is the styling for the span, so let's style the h3. We'll set color to orange. Now let's style the p tag. Change color to white. When we save, this is what we have. And this is what we want. So let's add the CSS, JavaScript, and also React in the HTML. So, and for that, we can just copy the skills details and paste for all the remaining items. And make the changes. So now I can run this and we have it for all of them. So now let's add the portfolio section. So now in the portfolio div, we'll create an h2 and the text is recent project. We'll start the styling with the portfolio div. We set padding top and bottom 0, left and right 1 rem. So let's style the h2 header. Now the text looks okay. After the h2, we'll create a div with the class project container. In it, we have one with the class project. Inside, we'll link an img. Or link an img for the project, and the alt I can make it just image. And that is the image I have here. After the img, we'll create a div with the class project detail. It's inside of it that we have this h1, also this text, and also the button. It's rather h3. So we'll create an h3. We'll call it project 1. After this, we'll create a paragraph tag. Inside, we'll generate some lorem text. Let's say 15 words should be okay. And after the p tag, we'll create a button. The text is view on GitHub. This is how it looks when we run it. So let's add the CSS. Now let's start the styling with the portfolio container. Set display flex. Set some gap, 5 pixels. So now let's start the project div. It's inside the portfolio container. Set some padding. Now let's start the img, the image inside of the project. We are getting somewhere. Now let's start the div with the class project details. There is no S. We'll give it a width. Now let's add the CSS for the h3 inside of the project details, but we'll come back to it. Now let's start the paragraph. Project details. We'll give it padding. This is the CSS for the p tag, so let's start the button. We'll set display block. Background color should be transparent. And color should be white. So when we run this, you can see we have this. So let's position it well. So in the project details, we set position absolute. Bottom, -170 pixels. Now you see it's hidden. So let's make it appear whenever we hover on this image. But let's first add some transition. 0.4 seconds. Should ease in out. Before we add the hover effect, let's make some changes. Let's make this one over here 150 instead of 170 negative. Also, let's change this thing. This is supposed to be in the HTML. We have project, not portfolio. Project container. So this as well should be project container. So now to add the hover effect, we have to take the project container, project, colon hover. When we hover, we'll take the project detail. Then we'll transform it, we'll translate it on the y-axis. So transform, translate y, -170 pixels. When we save this, you can see it works now. Alright, so let's add project 2. For that, we can just copy the project and paste again. We change this to project 2, as well as the image. And if I run this, I have the 2 projects here. You also realize that we have this text over here. Thanks for visiting my website, which only appears on smaller screens. So let's add it. After the closing portfolio div, we'll create an h3 with a class thank you. And the text is thanks for visiting my website. Let's add the CSS for it. It's inside the container div. We only set display to none. So nothing has changed. Also in the container, I want to give some padding. Padding button 2 area so that it will fill the wrapper div. Now you see it fills, there is no space at the bottom again. Now we're technically done with how we want the page to look on a larger screen. So let's add that for the smaller screen sizes. And before that, what we want to do is that for this image, we want to swap it with a different image on a smaller screen so that the positions will be changed. So let's add that. And for that, we'll just replace this one with a different image. So here in the HTML, in the left content div, before the h2, we'll link an img. We'll give it a class small image. And it's going to be the same user image. So images, and it's this one. The alt text can just be image. and it looks like this. So let's add the CSS. Here in the left content, before the H2 header, we'll select the small image. We'll give the CSS for it with 100 pixels. We'll give it some border. We'll give it some box shadow. Give it some vertical displacement and horizontal displacement, as well as a blur effect and a color. So we copy the same thing and paste again. Change these values to negative, the first two values to negative. The blur effect remains the same. When I save this, so we have it at the corner here, but we don't want it on the larger screen. So let's set the display to none. So display none. Now we don't have it again. Now we have to add the mobile responsiveness. Currently, you can see that our page on a smaller screen isn't looking okay. So let's add the CSS for it. And for that, we use media query. So we define a media query with the keyword at media. And we define the screen size, devices with max width 600 pixels. It means any device with a max width less than 600 pixels will have these stylings that we are going to define in this media query. For that, we'll start with the container div. We'll set padding bottom 1 rem. And after this, we'll take the navbar. It's inside the container. We'll remove all padding. Set padding 0. We'll take the H1 inside the navbar. We'll reduce the font size. We'll set margin left 3 pixels. Now you can see some small changes. Now let's deal with the list items. So we'll take the UL. It's inside the navbar. We'll set position absolute. Width 120 pixels. Now this is how it looks so far. Give it a background color. This RGB color code. When we save this, now you can see it looks quite okay. So we are getting somewhere. So now let's start the LI. Set width 100%. Border bottom 1 pixel solid white. Now we take the close icon inside the UL. We'll set display block. Now you see we have the icon over there and also the text underline for all this. Just so we can see the navbar very well, let's move it to the right. So over here in it, we can just set right 0. Now this is where we have it. When we click, you can see that the before pseudo element is still active. So let's remove it. So after the LI, select navbar, UL, LI, colon, before. We set display to none. After this, let's take the message div, which is also in the navbar, and give it a margin to the right, 2 rem. Now let's also take the hamburger icon and set the display to block. Now it is also here. Now let's take the content div and give it some padding, 1 rem. Now we'll take the small image. It's inside the left content. Set display block. Before the image, let's take the left content itself. Set width 100%. After the image, we'll start the H2 inside the left content. Font size is 1.3 rem. After that, we'll take the H3. Font size 1.5. Then we take the paragraph text. Set width. Text align is center. This is how it looks. You are not seeing any significant changes because this image is still here. So once we remove it from here, it will look very okay. So now let's deal with the social media icons. It's also inside the left content. And it's left content social. Set text align to center. Now let's take the right content. and it's inside the content div. We set display now, and now everything is looking very good. So now let's deal with the footer section. So after this one, we'll take the footer content, set padding, flex direction should be column. Now it looks like this. After this, we'll take the skills container. It's inside the skills div. Set display, flex. On a smaller screen, we'll remove the border. So we set border none. Now it looks this way. You'd realize that we have an H2 header here, but it's not showing. So we'll go back to the H2, the skills H2, and we set the color to white. Now you can see we have it here. So let's continue in the media query. So now let's deal with the portfolio side. We set padding 0. Then we'll take project container and set flex direction to column. We'll set margin top to REM. And after this, we'll take the project inside the project container. Set margin 0.8 REM. Now let's start the IMG inside the project. We'll set display block, margin auto. When we save, this is how it looks. Now let's start the project detail. It's inside the project. We set width, left is 10%. Now it also looks okay. Now we are left with a thank you header. It's inside the container. Set display block, text align is center, color is this one. And here we have it. So now let's have the list item, the UL, so that we can use JavaScript to open and close it. So instead of right 0, we make it negative 150 pixels. So now it's gone. So now we are left with the JavaScript. And to use a JavaScript, we first need to create a JavaScript file. So we'll create a new file here and call it script.js. And in the HTML, before the closing body tag, we'll create a script tag. We'll set the src to the JS file, script.js. So we can test to see if this is correctly working. So we'll create an alert statement. Hello. Alright, we have it here. So it means we have successfully connected the HTML to the JavaScript. Now we can remove this one. To start, we need to select the hamburger menu, the list items, and also the close icon. So let's do that with the JavaScript. So we declare a variable using the const keyword. We call it navlist. And that will be equal to document.query selector in quotes .navbar UL. That means the UL is inside the class with navbar. Now let's select the close icon. Should be equal to that is the class we give to it here. Let's also select the hamburger icon. What we have to do now is to set event listener on the hamburger icon so that whenever someone clicks on it, it will transform the UL into the website. So we say hamburger icon dot add event listener. It's a click event in quotes. After this, with a comma, we define an arrow function. When we click, we want to take the nav list dot style dot right should be equal to, in quote, 5 pixels. So when we head over to the website and we click this one, it should transform this one in. So we have to create a function for the close icon to, so whenever we click it, it also transform it back to where it was previously. And for that, we can just copy this function entirely and paste again and make some changes. Instead of hamburger, we'll make a close icon. When we click on the close icon, we want to transform the list item, the navbar, back to where it was initially. Initially, it has a height of negative 150 pixels. So when we save this, so now we can click the hamburger icon to open it and the close icon to close it. But it happens very fast. So let's add some transition. So in the UL, we'll add some transition, 0.3 seconds. It is in, out. Then we save. Now when we test it, it works perfectly. So everything looks well over here on this page. And on the larger screen, we have this over here working, the hover effect for the list items. We also have the focus effect for this input field, so we can do everything with it. And this works very well as we've demonstrated from the very beginning. So folks, this is basically how we've come to the conclusion of this video, how we build this single page portfolio website using HTML, CSS, and small JavaScript. If you find any value in this video so far, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more tutorials like this. For any question and suggestion, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. I'm Daniel. Thanks for watching.